Welcome to Biology 1408, Chapter 1, An Introduction to Biology from the Concepts and Connections textbook by OpenStax. This chapter will cover topics central to the study of biological sciences. By the end of this chapter, you will be able to identify and describe several of the key components central to the study of biology, including the properties scientists use to define living organisms, levels of organization among living things, a grouping system for all organisms called taxonomy, various branches of biological study, the use of scientific inquiry, and the overall goal of scientific research. To study biology, you must first be able to define life. Over the years, scientists have debated which factors should be used to make this determination. The overall consensus in the scientific community has been that the following 8 properties are required components for something to be considered living. The first property, order, really describes the coordination among organ systems within the organism, all the way to the patterning of organs like the petals in a sunflower. The second property, response to stimuli, describes an organism's ability to respond to external environmental pressures. This includes events like weather, availability of sunlight, predation. The video seen here shows a species of mimosa plant which responds to physical touch by closing the leaves together, in which some scientists believe could be a form of protection. The third property, reproduction, is the ability to produce offspring either asexually or sexually. Giraffes, like many eukaryotic organisms, use sexual reproduction to produce offspring. The fourth property, adaptation, refers to the ability of species to adapt to the environmental pressures, allowing them to survive and pass their genes to offspring in the next generation. An example, the Galapagos tortoise, shows subspecies which have adapted over time to better fit with the habitat available on various islands in the Galapagos archipelago. Each island inhabits a subspecies of tortoise which have different neck lengths and shell shapes that allow for overall survival. The fifth property, growth and development, is the ability of an organism to utilize its genetic code to provide instructions for development and/or growth of an organism. The genes responsible for embryonic development within the animal kingdom have been so well conserved throughout evolution, comparisons can be made between different species to better determine the history of life on our planet. The sixth property, regulation, is a very important property all organisms must be able to perform. This allows for organisms to control internal functions by turning them on and off. For example, it is incredibly important to be able to control the production of insulin within the bloodstream of a human. The seventh property, homeostasis, is the ability to maintain characteristics like temperature, pH, or chemical concentrations within an organism. The ability to sweat is one way humans evolved to help maintain an internal temperature of around 98 degrees. The eighth property, energy processing, is required so many of the metabolic processes within an organism may occur. With animals, the mitochondrial organelle is the location for most of the energy processing within a cell. Once the definition of living organisms has been adequately developed, biologists then view components of life at various levels of organization. The level can be relatively small, like the size of an atom, or relatively large, like the planet Earth. Let's take a look at the levels of organization biologists focus on the most in order from smallest to largest. The first level, an atom, is the basic unit of matter made of 3 subatomic particles, the proton, neutron, and electron. The second level, the molecule, is made of multiple atoms connected together by chemical bonds. An example molecule would be a phospholipid, which is used to form the plasma membrane of a cell. The third level, an organelle, is a functional structure made of multiple molecules within a cell of an organism. An example of an organelle would be the nucleus, which contains genomic material in a eukaryotic organism. The fourth level, the cell, is the smallest fundamental unit of structure and function within a living organism. The human red blood cell, whose main function is to carry oxygen to tissue throughout the body from the lungs, is a perfect example. The fifth level, tissue, is the grouping of similar cells into layers, which carry out the same function. Multiple layers of cells can be seen within the skin tissue, each having a slightly different function. The sixth layer, or level, which could in some cases be separated into two levels, consists of organs and organ systems. Organs are a collection of tissues which work together for a common function, and organ systems consist of a group of functionally related organs. For example, the stomach is an organ within a system which collectively with other organs functions in the process of food digestion. The seventh level could also be separated into three levels. Consists of organisms, populations, and communities. An organism is an individual living entity, like a person walking in the park. All the people in the park make a population, and all different living species within the park are considered a community. The eighth level, ecosystem, is all the living and non-living components of an environment, from the person jogging to the trail they are jogging on. The last level, level 9, is the biosphere. This encompasses all of the various ecosystems on the planet, from the cold tundras of Antarctica to the balmy beaches of Thailand. Biologists also like to group living organisms in a way which allows for organization of identified groups, communication among scientists across language barriers, and the ability to show evolutionary relationships between groups. In the 18th century, the scientist Carl Linnaeus proposed the use of a taxonomic hierarchy. Although Linnaeus proposed the use of less levels of hierarchy, over the years, more levels have been added to accommodate the numbers of new groups being identified. Currently, there are 8 levels of taxonomic hierarchy, starting with the most inclusive level being domain and the least inclusive level being species. Each level of hierarchy is called a taxon, and the last 2 taxa, genus and species, are used as the scientific name for a specific group. This process is called binomial nomenclature. By comparing the taxa for the dog and wolf, you can see they belong together within each taxon, even at the level of species. The lupus species can be further grouped into subspecies, with the dog belonging to the Familiaris subspecies and the North American Arctic wolf belonging to the Arctos subspecies. However, for this level of biology course, we will not dive into subtaxa. Rather, we will refer to the scientific name of both the dog and the wolf as Canis lupus. Once multiple organisms have been identified, their evolutionary relationships can be presented in what is called a phylogenetic tree of life. There are 3 domain taxons called bacteria, shown in blue, archaea, shown in red, and eukarya, shown in brown. Each of the taxons has groups of organisms which are more closely related to each other than the groups of organisms not within those domains. The branching and length of lines denote points in evolutionary history where new species diverged from an ancestor and an estimated relative time for when this occurred. Phylogenetic trees have real-world applications, especially in the medical field, where they can be used to follow the strains of pathogenic diseases like influenza or HIV. Biologists who develop phylogenetic trees study in a field called taxonomy. There are several branches of biological study, each with their own specialization. Probably some of the most widely recognized fields in biology are branches like, ecology, zoology, or paleontology, made famous by movies like Jurassic Park. However, there are new branches of biology being developed with advances in technology like 3D printing and genomics. One of the field of studies popularized by TV shows like CSI is forensic biology, where forensic scientists use scientific principles to answer questions in the context of the law. Forensic scientists not only process crime scenes and analyze evidence in crime labs, they do research which can help detectives determine, the who, what, and when in a particular crime case. This type of research is done at facilities called body farms. One such body farm, the Southeast Texas Applied Forensic Science Facility, is located in your backyard, Huntsville, Texas. As of 2017, there are only a total of 7 body farms located in the United States. I hear the one in Huntsville takes interns. Just a thought. All fields of science, including biology, use a general process of scientific inquiry. In general, observations can be used to come to logical conclusions, called inductive reasoning. Sometimes general scientific principles can be used to predict or forecast particular logical outcomes, and that's called deductive reasoning. Regardless of the form of inquiry, the scientific method is the most common process used to logically formulate conclusions about a particular observation. Even though there are many fields of science, the overall process of the scientific method is the same. A question is asked about an observation, a hypothesis and prediction is formulated which answers the question, an experiment is designed, performed, and results are analyzed. The interpretation of the results either support or not support the hypothesis. If the hypothesis is not supported, another one must be formulated and the process repeated until the results support the hypothesis. Scientific inquiry can be used in either of the main forms of scientific research, basic science versus applied science. The use of scientific inquiry is essentially the same, however the overall goal may be different. The basic or pure science, with that, the overall goal is to explain or expand the general knowledge base, which in most cases doesn't directly affect our society. However, with applied or technology science, the overall goal is to improve or solve an issue which directly affects our society. One of the major topics debated with regards to scientific funding is, do we put more money in one type of research over another? It seems easy to say we should really give more money to research which directly affects our society, like applied science. But what many people do not realize is that applied science relies extremely heavily on knowledge gained from basic research. I wanted to give you an example of basic research versus applied research that can be seen in comparison between Dr. Rai Young at Texas A&M University in College Station and a company called Amplify Biosciences based in San Diego, California. Dr. Young's research lab focuses on the study of molecules and mechanisms of a virus called bacteriophage. His work and many others has allowed for companies like Amplify Bioscience to develop phage therapies to treat patients who are infected with antibiotic-resistant bacteria. Dr. Carrie Furr, who is Vice President of Regulatory Affairs at Amplify Biosciences, got her PhD at Texas A&M University and was a graduate student in Dr. Young's lab. Essentially, she used her knowledge base of basic research and applied that to a company that now has real-world effects in our society. Now that we have looked at all of the material in Chapter 1, there are a few things you could do to help you succeed in learning this material. Take a look at the list shown and do as many as you can. Thank you for listening and can't wait to see you in the next chapter.